good evening, good morning, and good afternoon, wherever you are at. This is To Be Continued, here with a new episode of the Unleashed series. This episode 3, is titled The European Question. Now, this is kind of a follow up to the previous video I made about the Ukraine and Russian war, but this whole, you know, video was basically born out of the events of yesterday. So, to give everyone a recap, yesterday Vice President Vance went to the Munich Security Conference and basically told Europe that, hey, you're clamping down on your freedoms. There's no freedom of speech. Or what's happening in Romania, the elections. And the European leaders basically scoffed at him. Now, this reaction is kind of expected, and I kind of want to go over, whether or not it is in the best interest of the United States to stay in NATO or even, with our traditional quote unquote allies. Now, I want to preface and say there are some nice people in Europe. I'm not bashing the entirety of the population of Europe. And I bet there's some Europeans out there that kind of feel what, the right in America feels. And to all those Europeans that are, sympathetic to the United States or even to Trump's ideas, thank you for still believing in us and still keeping hope. But this is to a response to, the leaders of Europe and kind of the prevailing attitude. So first, I'm going to basically talk about the NATO alliance. Now, as many should know, NATO stands for the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. I'm sorry, not North American. It was founded in 1949 with the original founders being Belgium, Canada, Denmark, France, Iceland, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, United Kingdom, and United States. Later on in 1952, Greece and Turkey joined. West Germany joined in 1955, and in the 1990s when the reunified Germany kind of rejoined. Spain in 1982, the Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland in 1999, Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, Slovakia, and Slovenia in 2004, Albania and Croatia in 2009, Montenegro in 2017, North Macedonia in 2020, Finland in 23, and Sweden in 24. Now, this organization back in 1949 was to, create a deterrent against the USSR. In fact, the USSR attempted to join in the 50s, but was soundly rejected. They did this because they wanted to see if this organization was really an anti-Soviet pact, and sure enough, it was. So then the Warsaw Pact was found, and throughout the Cold War, it was basically the NATO versus the Warsaw Pact. But ever since the Berlin Wall fell, the Eastern European countries got away from communism, and the fall of the USSR, it's kind of in a limbo because there's not really an alliance to counterbalance it. There's some certain acts we probably know about in Article 5. Article 5 was actually triggered after 9/11, but basically Article 5 is if one of our members gets attacked, we're all going in. But anyways, in the 21st century, some are kind of questioning the importance of the alliance and, is it really needed? And looking back at the events of yesterday and kind of overall, I'm in the personal belief that the United States should partially withdraw from NATO. Now, this has to do with multiple things, but in reality, it's all, so-called allies. Their attitudes towards us. If you ever go on social media, you can find plenty of Europeans mocking Americans. They joke about, oh, the Americans have too much school shootings and no free healthcare, blah, blah, blah. I think it was this general attitude of marking the hand that feeds you. Because guess what? United States provides a lot of support in NATO. So what I have here is from the NATO actually itself, a bar graph. Now, let's be clear, I am not good at statistics. I didn't really do that well in my college class, so be warned. But here's all the defense expenditure. United States is 3.8, and yes, only Poland and Estonia surpasses it. We look at countries like United Kingdom, and you got France, Canada, Italy, Spain, where's Germany? You know something? United States is basically paying for a lot of the NATO fees and expenditure. Now I look, and as you see, it looks like the equipment stuff is a mixed bag. So I can you know ignore that. But look at this: NATO, Europe, and Canada, United States, 24. You know something? The United States is always higher. It should be evenly distributed. And I think this is kind of a main problem we're seeing. I think Trump is also seeing this kind of like, hey, you guys need to pay up a little bit. Because this is kind of a root cause, I think, to all this grumbling. There's other stuff too, and we're going to talk about it a little bit on. But, anyways, as an American, it just seems mind boggling that we're being asked to take care of all the expenditures, but yet we're kind of laughed at when you say, hey, what about this instead? Because look, Europe is kind of facing the don't bite the hand that feeds you. The United States, we're the dominant power, we're the superpower in the world. We basically have the abilities to protect our allies, our friends, whatever you call them, but yet they are they are acting hostile to us. And this kind of circles back to the Russia-Ukraine war because it seems there's a growing disconnect between the European allies and the United States. It seems like the basically the EU wants the war to continue. They blindly think that Ukraine can probably take out Russia, and this blindness is out of ignorance, pure blissful ignorance. Because here's another history lesson. After the fall of the USSR, Russia was just the Russian Federation. They had Yeltsin, and he was a drunkard and didn't last that long. They elected Putin. Russia has always had a history of electing strong men, whether it was Peter the Great or Vladimir Lenin, Joseph Stalin, now Vladimir Putin. There's always a strong men at the top. And I think this kind of has to do with the Russian culture. They're not like the Western, European powers. I don't exactly know if democracy can even fit over there. And I think it's kind of ignorant to even believe that you can shove a democracy onto a nation, so fast. Look what happened to Iraq. In the United States, we tried to do that, or did that, or how do we ever say that, but we tried that. We tried nation building in Iraq and Afghanistan. But look what's happening now. Afghanistan is in the hands of the Taliban, and Iraq is basically dust and terrorist organizations shooting AK 47s in the air, essentially. You can't really nation build, and I believe this is where the disconnect happens. See, Trump, he realizes that you cannot, in order to basically stop the killing, you have to stop it now. For any chance of Ukraine's sovereignty, you have to stop the war now. Ukraine cannot beat Russia. It cannot. Because what will happen if Putin decides to purge all the incompetent generals and finds competent ones? What then? Because guess what? If those competent generals in charge, they're going to blitz through Ukraine. It's going to be like we have never seen. And yet, it seems like the EU just wants war or has blind faith that war is a feasible option. So before I go on about the European faults, how should the war end and how should the United States get his money back? Well, Trump wants some mineral rights, but it looks like Zelensky is rejecting it. Here's a problem. We provide the most aid out of the NATO countries. We sent them billions of dollars and help and so much weapons. At least at least what they can do is repay us back in raw materials, like minerals. It would be it honestly would be a better idea for that because one, it won't not really pay us the money back, and they can use that to reinvest in rebuilding. And two, we can get at least some, value, from it. But as let's say this, it's going to be a tough road because I, some of these Ukraine Sims don't realize the biggest reason. I'm going to search down a little bit. Let's find ah. So this one, it's all odd and disoriented to see important allies of America get treated like the adversaries or worse. My response is the European nations haven't really given us you know, any reason to continue on with NATO. What worth are they to us? Because guess what? We're paying for the bulk. We Why should we continue seeing money or arms or even keep military bases over there? They complain about us not having universal health care, but you know why? Do they know why? We pay for the defense budget, so they can have universal health care, but we don't. Ah, the European EU leaders are kind of panicking, and now problem is, folks, is we're not appeasing Russia. Okay, and I'll get to this later on because there's a difference between negotiation and appeasement. Because guess what? You know, the treating this as, it's like the Munich back in the 1938, And here's a statement which I wholly agree. It wasn't the Hector, European allies, you know, stuff is not going to change overnight, but we need to push in the right direction. So, what are my honest thoughts about what's going on in Europe and the war in general? How do I think the war is going to end? At this point, I'm not really as confident as I was a couple of days ago because it seems like the EU part of NATO is going to try their best to sabotage any attempts of a fair peace treaty. Because on the name of you can't appease Putin. Well, here's the crucial part. How do you negotiate a peace without Putin? You can't. He has to be invited to the table. We have both of them to talk. You know. Now, I think their idea of appeasement is just handing Russia territory and not letting Ukraine into NATO. Here's the thing: Putin has always said he doesn't want NATO in his front yard. Now, whether it's just a bluff or whether he's serious, you know, we should technically take you know him a little bit more serious because guess what? He, if Ukraine joins NATO, what does he have left to lose and launch out our war? He could do that, but why not try every thing is best for as peace? Now, the idea of Ukraine non-NATO is probably the reason why this whole split's happening. But guess what? A demilitarized zone on the border with European NATO troops is probably the second the best thing. Because if you can say if Russia or Belarus attacks these troops on the demilitarized zone, Article 5 will get invoked, and you'll be a war in NATO. It would be the next best thing of Ukraine technically being in NATO while not being in NATO itself. There's probably ways we can also guarantee the security of Ukraine without it being NATO. But right now, the European leaders seem to not get through the thick brains or thin skin, I guess, or whatever you want to say what they have, that this whole thing is not going to work out. because they're turning out to be very disastrous allies. Now, a lot of these European people on X are saying America betrayed us. Is betraying us. But I think it's the opposite around. I think Europe is betraying America because guess what? Our values are not going to line up anymore. So guess what? Why should America stay in NATO? When you got in UK, people get arrested for praying outside abortion clinics or posting memes online about a certain demographic group that is deemed offensive. Look, Europe is facing a migrant crisis, and a lot of the right wing parties are trying to point this out, but yet the dominant parties are trying to ban them, throw them in jail. What's the difference between the EU and Russia? I started to think there's not really of a difference. You know, they're trying to point out, like, Trump and try to decide an insurrection. When the EU it canceled an election in Romania because a pro Russian candidate won, and it was Russian interference. They literally canceled the election, and that they're going to point the finger at us. Now, I'm not sure how, but I think the United States should create a level bar where it basically says if this marker reaches zero, the United States will withdraw from NATO. It'll go from, let's say, 20 to 0. Each tick going down, will go to 0. So let's say the EU bans a party. Be like 5 ticks down the bar. Use the, if they're afraid of the United States of banning NATO, let's use that to our advantage to get some change. If we have to scare them, if we have to be the bad guy, then so be it if we think being NATO is still a good idea. Because guess what? They're not treating us fairly. They boiling hate us. Okay, as an American, it's saddening that our quote unquote allies have such disdain for us. Because guess what? We pay for the defense. You know, they cry about Russia, and we have to come to the rescue. So, you know, but here's the thing: Russia's not really the primary threat anymore. In fact, there's a larger, greater threat out east: China. China is way more of a threat than Russia. China is probably even more powerful than Russia. And yet they want to whine and there's a certain word that I'm not going to use because I don't curse. I don't use curse words, okay? Besides that side tangent. You know? About Russia. You know, I think it's time the United States should reorientate it to allies that fit our interests. Out, across the Pacific Ocean. You can try to build stronger ties with India, make Japan stronger. Heck, build up an alliance with Argentina or El Salvador. Find make allianceships. Well, no, I don't even know that word is correct. So, pardon me. Alliances with friendlier nations. Let's stop being friends with nations that doubt us or call us appeasers or will call us names or get offended when we point out their faults. What I find irony is I think there's some Europeans that claim Americans have ego. But yet, you point something out to them, they'll get offended. It's like they have the bigger ego. Well, that way gets very funny when you see European meltdown when they're called out, you know, something that's wrong with their country into the face. And this whole thing has to kind of do with the what we call the decline of Europe. is mass migration. They're bringing in people from other cultures who do not respect the traditional Western culture, and yet their leaders allow it. Because any criticism they deem it offensive, and they can be thrown in jail. But they're going to be facing a decision within the next decade or so on whether it was worth it to let all these mass migrants in. Because guess what? All your global schemes, they're going to fall apart when all these migrants become the majority of your country and turn into a Islamic theocratic state like Iran. Hate to break it to you, but I don't think climate change is going to be the biggest of your worries. In fact, you might wish that the sea will swallow you up by the end of this. And guess what? As Americans, we shouldn't care about it. Let them to their own devices. They're going to dig the grave. Let them do it. Now, I would like to reiterate that I have no ill will towards the individual Europeans. There are some that are very nice, some that do understand our situation in America, some that even understand our position and sympathize, with us wanting to not, be the primary, you know, protector of Europe. And to other people who are sympathetic to the right in America, thank you. You know, we really appreciate, you know, speak up in favor of America if you're in Europe. If you like America and you believe that your freedoms are being chased away. Try your best. Keep on. Fight, fight, fight. Because guess what? If your countries, do U-turn and start acting nice to the United States, then guess what? There will be no reason for us to leave NATO. But right now, I'm going to advocate for a soft withdrawal of NATO. Now, before I end this segment, yes, a soft withdrawal means pulling away some money, pulling away some troops, basically, become very little, active on the partnership. At least until Europe gets to its head that, it needs to step up. Of course, as I'm recording this video, we basically have someone saying that, he's not happy if Trump spoke with Putin before him. Who cares? Look, some people need to get in the head. Russia is the dominant power in this war. They outnumber Ukraine. They have more firepower than Ukraine. They are the dominant power. So thus, it is reasonable for Trump to talk to Putin first. In fact, it's probably even more important for Trump to talk to Putin first because guess what? That's how you get peace. It's a no-brainer. A very much no-brainer. It's kind of ridiculous that we're seeing this weird thought that you can negotiate without the other side. It kind of shows the hubris of the European powers. Anyways, that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please, if you hit the like and subscribe button. That would be very appreciated. And like always, have a rest of a wonderful day wherever you're at. God bless.